Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Big Dudes in the Trenches podcast. We
Hello.
are Douglas today. It's just
Yet
me
again.
and my good buddy Bug. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Okay. All right.
I just
I
got
got off work and fell asleep, so we're
I just
back,
got
baby.
I got 2 free tickets to a Royals game coming up in September in a box. All you can eat hot dogs, chicken fingers, mac and cheese. Pretty
Nice. They're
excited.
giving them away now.
Oh
Nice.
yeah.
Right when the Guardians are on their big winning streak and then
Yeah,
big
beating
losing
the
streak and
shit
now
out of
winning
them.
streak again.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, beating the shit out of the Cubs this week. That was cool too. So, been a
Yes.
shitty week for
Yes.
baseball for me.
Except for the free tickets.
Except for the free tickets.
Sounds like good tickets. So that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Royals won today, so we're not talking about baseball
Well,
though. We're not talking about baseball though. We're talking about
we are
Madden because that
definitely
just came out.
Yeah, I haven't even played Madden yet, and I don't really want to. It's just, to me, Madden's going to be a tool to continue my Road to Glory series. Other than that, I kind of don't care to play Madden this year.
That's kind of what I'm thinking too. And I saw somebody made a tool where it'll take your college attributes and convert them to what they should be in Madden. And that sounds cool and everything, but the amount of money they're charging for it, I'm just like, I'll figure it out on my own. I'll just knock 10 or 15 off.
You can export Road to Glory.
Oh, well, perfect. That's too easy then. Yeah. There's still things that I want to see fixed. I'm curious what the team builder is going to look like in Madden. Because if it's better than the one for college football, that might be the only thing they've got going better for them right now. I just think college football is a better football game, but I do think from what I've seen, I have seen a couple people playing Madden. I think they've added some features that people have been asking for. So maybe they're on the right trajectory. But now that there's some competition to be the best football game out there in their own company, I think Madden's going to start undergoing some huge changes here shortly.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen franchise mode looks entirely different.
Yes.
Than what it was.
Yes.
In a lot of positive ways, it also does look a little bit cluttered to me, but maybe that's because I'm not used to it yet.
Yeah, I haven't gotten super into it. It took so long to download. All I did was I started my Ultimate Team, which I always start one, and then I get really bored with it. And I've just been messing around with College Ultimate Team. I enjoy that a million times more than Madden Ultimate Team. So I don't know what the problem is, what the difference is. I will say for sure, Madden feels like the game runs slower. Like the game just moves slower. Like to quote Justin Fields, it's just slow, man.
Well, that was one of the big advertising points of college football is the game feels fast and energetic. Yes. And now I'm used to it, so it's going to be pretty hard to go to Madden, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a month of college football, and I have not opened College Ultimate Team. I'm proud of that. I'm sticking to it.
It just sucks that that's where all, besides getting to play early, that's where all your pre-order stuff goes. So,
right.
I don't know.
I mean, what else would they give you for pre-order?
I don't know. They gotta figure something out, I guess, because putting it all towards Ultimate Team, that's how they're going to continue to make money on the game throughout the year. I get it, but
right,
I really don't know.
It's all about the money, man. Anyway, we have 5 conferences we're going to be previewing today, just 2 weeks ahead of week 0, which feels crazy to say. Week 0 this year is not going to be that intense. Biggest game we have Florida State, Georgia Tech in Ireland. Other than that, not much going on.
What are you doing on October 12th?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Have you not seen this going around the internet lately?
I guess not.
So the October 12th college football slate. All right. I know one game for sure that you're watching. And I'm not going to be able to get a hold of you during that game. It is Ohio State against Oregon.
Okay, yeah.
At Oregon,
It'll be a night game.
Likely, yep.
Like a 3:30 game over there, which means 6:30 over here. So
we also have
7:30
Florida.
PM.
Yeah, we have Florida and Tennessee. We have Ole Miss and LSU. We have Penn State and USC, and we have the OU Texas game. And those are just the preseason top 25 matchups.
I just flipped to that day's schedule, and the first game that I see is Missouri at UMass.
Yeah.
Banger. Cincinnati UCF. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Boise State Hawaii. Let's go.
Stanford Notre Dame, another rivalry game going on there. I mean, it's a lot of good.
Vanderbilt at Kentucky.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're getting out of control. Let's reel it back in. What are we going to talk about today?
Yes, let's get started with the Pioneer Football League, which, nice. Just like every other conference we've been doing, we'll be doing a tier list style. We'll be doing 5 conferences today. I don't know if I said that already or not, so I'm saying it now again. Starting off with the Pioneer League, which Drake won last year for the first time in program history. They got to the playoffs. They lost in the first round of the playoffs, 66-3. The Pioneer League is not necessarily that good across all of FCS football. They're not trying to be. Pioneer League is one of those conferences in the FCS that does not offer athletic scholarships. So the fact that they get to go to the playoff at all is kind of crazy. But we see that reflected in a great example is Drake last year, who started out in the non-conference 0-3, including a loss to a Division II school. Then they went 8-0 in conference play, won the league, got to the playoff, and lost 66-3 in the first round of the playoffs. So I don't think it's fair for any Pioneer League team to go in the good tier at all.
I would agree.
It's going to be stingy up in mid.
Yeah. And then one is just going to have to go in the playoff team tier. So I think we just throw Drake in there and then not address anything else about them for the rest of the show.
Well, I agree that Drake should be back up there. So they are returning basically their entire core. The question, though, is can they repeat the improbable 8-0 run where they won 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those games? 6 of them by 1 score. The only games they won definitively were against St. Thomas and against Stetson, which, while they beat St. Thomas 55-21, congratulations, that's good. But Stetson is one of the worst teams in all of the FCS last year. So the fact that they beat everybody else by 1 score doesn't give me a ton of confidence. If I were to pick another team out of the hat that should contend for the playoff spot, I mean, realistically, it's St. Thomas has a shot to win the conference. But they're ineligible for the playoffs until 2026 because they're still in transition up from D3. The other team I would think is in contention for that spot would be Butler, which sounds crazy because they haven't really done it before. But they do bring in the quarterback from Dartmouth, Nick Howard, who made Dartmouth pretty interesting the past few years. I don't know who else could challenge for that spot, so I'm throwing Butler into the ring.
I'll give you that. St. Thomas beat them by 7, but here's the other interesting thing. We already mentioned that Drake went undefeated through the conference. St. Thomas was also undefeated through the conference, except for their game against Drake, where they lost 52-21. So the gap there is so wide, and Butler's more on par with St. Thomas. I think they're both in mid. I don't really know how much either team can compete against Drake right now.
Well, you're saying we don't know how much they can compete, but I'm saying Drake should have lost at Moorhead. And I was at that game, and it felt like Moorhead literally tried their hardest to lose that game in the fourth quarter. Moorhead did everything they could to figure out how to lose that game. And then they turn around next week and only beat Valparaiso by 6. Like, this isn't a great team we're talking about with Drake.
None of these teams are great.
Okay, fair. Oh, man. The other question for me is Davidson up there in mid as well. Now, I don't think of them as the same, necessarily a contender for the conference like we have St. Thomas and Butler. They're returning a lot, including their quarterback, Coulter Cleland, who didn't have to throw the ball too much. When he did, he was pretty efficient with it. 1,400 yards, 17 touchdowns for him, but also consider that Davidson led the FCS in rushing yards per game. They lost out in total to a playoff team who got more counting stats, but per game average, Davidson was the best running team in all of the FCS last year. I could potentially see them as the next best of the conference. Other than that, I don't know where I would put them.
I can agree with that, but we got to see where this quarterback play is going to be. I don't think they need to go in bad. I think we can leave them in. We can put them in mid. We can put them in there in the mix with St. Thomas and Butler. But if their quarterback play can't take a step forward to take advantage of how much people are going to be committing to the run against them, it's not going to be a pretty picture for them. It's not going to be a good season for them.
We were thinking that last year, and they ended up with over 300 yards on the ground per game. If they can keep doing that, they don't need to throw that much.
I mean, that's true. You win the clock battle. You never know what's going to happen.
They also did lose to Moorhead and Dayton at the end of the year by a lot. So we'll see. We'll see where they end up. But yeah, I like putting Davidson up there as better than the rest of these bums, which probably includes some combination of San Diego, Dayton, Presbyterian, Marist, and Moorhead in bad. I would say we save shit tier for Valpo and Stetson.
I think that's really about all the conversation we need to have. I don't know if there's a ton more to throw into this. Moorhead, do we think Moorhead or Presbyterian could potentially make the jump out of the shit tier? I think those are probably your only two that have a real shot, but you know, that's also because Presbyterian got smart and fired that coach that didn't want to punt. So
they won 4 games last year. Not too shabby compared to everything else going on in the conference. I do have to say, if your mascot is called the Blue Hose, you ought to seek medical attention. But yeah, that's going to do it for the Pioneer League. It's not going to produce more than one playoff team ever. So, and the one that they do will get blown out. So let's switch gears here. Jump to the Patriot League, which has a ranked team going into the season. This is the first ranked team that we've encountered because we've been reviewing some pretty bad conferences, but also the Chattanooga of the world that we already talked about We talked about before the preseason rankings came out for the FCS. The Stats Perform Top 25 is out now. That's one that I like to use usually. And Lafayette comes in at number 17 in that top 25, the only ranked squad out of the Patriot League. That is incredible. If you've kept up with Lafayette football for the past 5 years or so,
I think they paid somebody
used
off.
to be very bad. And now they're number 17 in the country going into the season, coming off of a playoff berth. They return their quarterback. They get their running back, who almost 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns. Jamar Curtis is legitimately a good running back. I don't see a clear and obvious contender to just straight up knock them off the top spot because everybody else is getting worse, right? So
right.
Lafayette feels like the clear-cut favorite at this point to be that playoff team. Any objection?
Oh, yeah. No. 100%. That's not what I was making that face at for all of our video viewers. I'm looking at the stats. I have the Stats Perform Top 25 up as well. And I'm not surprised by the top 5 whatsoever. Not to completely derail our argument here, but the team at number 10 has me scratching my head a lot, and I'm a fan of this team.
Yeah.
And I have no idea how they're at 10 with all that they're losing going into the season. But we'll talk about them.
We'll get to that next
on another
week.
episode. Yeah.
In the meantime, we have to deal with what's left over here of, I would say Holy Cross is probably still in the good tier.
That's where I was going to go next. If Lafayette is the playoff team, Holy Cross is definitely good, potentially could sneak into that playoff as well.
My problem with Holy Cross is they lost basically everybody that you could think to name from last year's Holy Cross squad. Their head coach, Bob Chesney, is now the head coach at JMU.
Right.
So they bring in Dan Curran from Merrimack, which feels like a pretty solid hire. Merrimack's had good offenses. We'll see how that works out. Matthew Sluka is now at UNLV. Jalen Coker is now on the Carolina Panthers. They had 2 solid offensive linemen, including one of our preseason All-Americans. Not even preseason. He made our All-America squad last year at the offensive line. Luke Newman, who's now at Michigan State, moved up. And Jacob Dobbs, their best defensive player, followed his head coach to JMU. So they're filling in a whole lot of gaps here. I also was shocked to see how few transfers they brought in. Not too much coming in that way. Really cool as far as, Dan Curran wants to build the program the right way, get a bunch of high school kids. That's awesome. If they can do that sustainably in this new world of college football, good on you.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a struggle in a couple of years' time. I think right now they'll probably be okay, but maybe good for now. And next year we might have to really reevaluate how we think about Holy Cross, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's a real shame, but we could be way off. We could be the Doomsday Bears and just saying the sky's falling. They could come out and dominate.
I know they might. They very well might. Who knows? We'll get a new Matthew Sluka out of nowhere. Speaking of good quarterbacks, Fordham brings back CJ Montez, who didn't really take off like I thought he would. Had some struggles early in the year, but found his footing. And Fordham's offense should at least be good. The defense is the issue, and maybe even knocks them down to mid. I'm not sure what you think about this Rams team overall.
They had defense issues last year too, though.
They did.
Like that's not a new thing, and they were in the conversation of potentially going to the playoffs most of last season as well. I think they're still in that good section. I don't think it's unreasonable to believe in them to improve that defense when when it's that much of a glaring issue and the rest of your team is doing so much better, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt here. They haven't really given me too much of a reason to not give them at least that.
Now, it's difficult for me to pinpoint where Colgate and Georgetown should go here. Either mid, or do we just dive straight in and call them bad? Now, Colgate returns basically everybody.
Yeah.
Except for the leading tackler, which is tough, but you'll get a new one of those. That's how that works. Georgetown went 5-6 last year, but that was their best season in a while, and they lost a bunch of players because of it. Because that's how that works in college football now. But they do have stability. Rob Sklarda is the longest tenured coach in this conference. They're pretty comfortable being that tier break, but does that mean they're in mid, or does that mean that they're bad overall? It's really tough to compare them to the rest of the FCS.
I think they're probably in mid. I'd say they're probably in mid. The way I see it, they could go either way. I don't think they're definitively in bad. I don't think they're definitively in mid. Potential to be in good, maybe. But I don't think they're so solidly bad or mid that they don't belong at least in mid.
All right. We'll go with that. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I don't know what to think of it. What I do know for sure is that Bucknell gets bumped out of shit. Finally, they are bad now. Good job, Bison. And Lehigh. Yeah. they're struggling, which is,
and watch, they'll beat Lafayette in the game. Watch.
It's always brutal to see your biggest rival do all the things that you are entirely incapable of doing. It's a very bad feeling. We're not going to dwell on that. And go ahead and jump to the used to be the Colonial Athletic Association. Changed that pretty recently to the Coastal Athletic Association. And it makes a lot more sense as a coastal conference than the FBS Coastal Conference that we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
But starting us off here, do we want to go top to bottom? Or we want to go bottom to top with the CAA? Because we do have a newcomer.
I think the CAA is worth. Yeah, I think the CAA, you might want to go bottom to top. We're definitely starting to get into the better FCS conferences. I could see multiple playoff teams coming out of this conference bottom to top.
Yeah. But I did want to start with Bryant because they are brand new to the conference. Welcome to a conference that makes sense for you. The Rhode Island-based team is no longer in the Big South. So the Bryant Bulldogs, congratulations on your new home. You belong at the bottom because you're not good. But you made it to the CAA. So good job on that. Maine feels like they're going to struggle this year as well.
Oh, I mean, when hasn't Maine struggled, though?
Yeah, fair.
I'm just amazed that there's more than one college in Rhode Island. I feel like we saw every building in Rhode Island when we were there. So this is quite amazing to me.
I know. I don't know how they have room for more than one football field. But
I don't
guess they have a couple more buildings than that. It's crazy. Also in shit tier is the other new team, I would say. Stony Brook is not going to be very good this year.
I would agree.
And maybe North Carolina A&T feels harsh, but they didn't do very well in their first year in the CAA last season. And I don't know what they've really done to improve on that. Do they go in the shit tier? Do they start us off on the bad tier? What's your vibe?
They might be the back of bad. They might be the back of bad.
I can live with that. Which means we have a front of bad, which should include Towson.
Yep. I would argue.
Who else?
I would argue UNH and Campbell, but I could see if you want to put one of them in mid.
I don't want to put UNH in bad. Campbell, definitely. I would argue that Monmouth probably should be in bad. Okay. The only reason they were decent the past couple of years is Jalen Sheridan, who is no longer there.
Fair. But man, it's crazy
UNH
how many
probably
teams...
starts us off the bottom of mid.
Yeah. It is crazy how fast we were able to get through just the bottom half of this conference. And yet we're still expecting, I would say, at least 2. If Delaware was going to be eligible, I'd say 3, but unfortunately they're ineligible, so the highest they can do is go into the good tier.
Well, even with that, I'd say 3 playoff teams anyway.
Yeah. Elon was close to it last year. William and Mary was in it last year. I think it was William and Mary and Richmond, right?
Before we get there, let's talk about the other kind of borderline teams. We skipped over Hampton, which is either they're not good. They're not good. Do they belong in the bad tier? Probably.
Yeah. Probably right in the middle there.
And then the other team that most people don't think has a real shot at the playoffs would be Rhode Island.
Yep.
Which they lose their quarterback in addition to not having a fantastic squad overall. So they'll be rebuilding as of in some fashion. Rhode Island will look very different. Bryant lost their quarterback too, didn't they? Zevi Eckhouse is gone. Where did he go?
Let me look.
Washington State. All
Gross.
Right. Might be cool. I guess they're seeing how the FCS has worked for them in the past. Cam Ward did great things for them, so they're trying their hand at it again. But anyway, a couple more teams to go here. Once we get past Elon and Delaware, we're into the ranked squads, which is impressive.
And Delaware was a playoff team last year. Like we said, they're not eligible for the playoff. Well, let's just get it out of the way. Let's just throw them in good. It's upsetting because then they're going to go to the FBS level, to Conference USA, and still not be eligible. A lot of FCS fans in particular, and FBS fans for that matter, are getting kind of upset that Conference USA continually is just a introductory conference for everybody, especially because we haven't seen anybody go down in a while to the FCS level. I know UConn was thinking about it. UMass seems to be an intelligent choice to push down to the FCS, but instead they're somehow independent, and more teams keep flooding.
Well, and UMass just joined the MAC for next year, so they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Would have made sense, but I would have loved to see UMass go back to the CAA.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Feels like that would have been a nice 1-to-1 trade for Delaware. Ain't happening.
Nope.
Elon should compete in some fashion, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I put them any higher than.
I feel like last year they were the team that everybody said was right there, but the
Yeah.
teams that were there got them every single time. So
I feel like that's going to happen again, but I might put them ahead of New Hampshire in mid.
I would say that's fine for the Muskrats. No reaction. All I get is a head nod.
I do want to say before we jump to the ranked teams, the reason we have New Hampshire in mid and not any higher than that, they lost their two best players. Dylan Laube is now, I think, on the Oakland Raiders. Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders. And Max Brosmer, their quarterback, is now on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, which is not necessarily an upgrade for Minnesota, but they just got rid of their quarterback anyway. And their old quarterback, Kelly McManus, is now somewhere else. Isn't he at Rutgers?
I think so.
Man, I should know this. Ethan Kelly McManus. Yes, he is on Rutgers now. Is that an upgrade for Rutgers even? Man, who knows? Apparently, everybody thinks they upgraded. It feels very much like a Kyle McCord, Will Howard trade. Is it actually an upgrade or is it a vibe upgrade?
It's definitely the vibes.
All right. And then there were 4 in the CAA, and all 4 of these teams are ranked, and all 4 of them are ranked inside the top 20, not just top 25. The lowest among them is number 16, Albany, which, yeah, that's fair for them to be the lowest ranked. Reese Poffenbarger is now at Miami.
Yep.
Where he will be the backup quarterback for this season, but he has 2 years of eligibility remaining. So he's angling to be Miami, Florida's starting quarterback next year after Cam Ward goes to the NFL. They do bring in Miles Burkett at quarterback from Wisconsin, which didn't get to see a whole lot of him at Wisconsin. What we did see of him, he was pretty solid. Not good enough to stay at Wisconsin, but good enough to get 2 starts his time there. So interesting trade at quarterback for them. They do return their All-American running back, Griffin Wardell. Albany should be good again. But to be fair, it was weird that they were good last year. Kind of out of nowhere. And they're not sneaking up on anybody anymore. And their best defensive players are gone, aren't they? Young Kai is. Where did he go? Arkansas? Yeah. Their great edge rusher, who I kept singing the praises of, Anton Youngkai, is now on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Good for him. Also brutal for Albany.
Yeah.
It feels like a good tier to me.
Yeah, I think
not necessarily a playoff team.
Because I don't know. I'm curious what your opinion is, because I don't know that we're getting 4 teams out of the CAA into the playoff unless something incredible happens. So I do think we're having at least one on the outside looking in, and I think that's going to be Albany. I think Richmond's repeating for sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. We'll see. I think William and Mary gets in this year. They were left on the outside looking in, and I don't believe they lost near as much as Albany lost. So the real question remains, Villanova, you're throwing them up into the playoff team tier. So
Absolutely.
I don't know how much. Yeah, I don't know how much more you want to go into that one, but
Well, it's kind of crazy to me how little I usually give Villanova credit.
Yeah.
Because they've been so solid the past few years. It feels like
They were the 8 seed last year.
How good they have been has flown under the radar for me personally. I don't know if that's true for anybody else. They have at least shared the CAA title 2 of the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like they're going to do that again. Like, there's no reason to think that they won't win the CAA this year. Is Richmond going to legitimately challenge them for the title? Who knows? If they do, it would be their last ever CAA title, unless they come back, I guess. But they are leaving next season for the Patriot League. Wild
Which
to
they
me.
just want to dominate in. I mean,
it seems like it.
The CAA had 4 teams in last year. Delaware, of course, being the 4th. William and Mary on the outside looking in. Basically, it sounds like what we're saying here is Albany just lost too much, and
yeah,
I wonder what the committee thinks when they're looking at this, and they're like, automatically Delaware can't come in.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we rank the rest of the conference, knowing that there's already a team that's ineligible for the playoff, right?
Right.
What would Albany, or if there is a 4th bubble team from the CAA, what would they have to do to fill that hole that Delaware is leaving, to be that additional team going to the playoffs here?
Well, beating Idaho in the non-conference would help a lot. They play at Idaho, which was going to be an awesome game at the beginning of the season. I'm pretty excited for that one. That's like one of my favorite FCS matchups in September. Yeah, we'll see. That would help a ton if they can do that. And then their conference schedule shapes out pretty nicely. The toughest team that they play in conference is Delaware. Maine, Bryant, Elon, Delaware, New Hampshire, Stony Brook, Rhode Island, and Hampton on the slate for them. So their schedule breaks in such a way they can make it pretty easily. I think they do need to go undefeated in the CAA, though, to be in contention and win 2 of the 4 non-conference games, because they play LIU and Cornell in addition to Idaho and West Virginia, which nobody expects them to beat West Virginia. But,
West Virginia.
if they could,
yeah.
If they beat West Virginia, they're in the playoff. But yeah, Richmond and William and Mary, before we move on completely, funny to me that the complete opposite of Lafayette and Lehigh, we're looking at the 2 biggest rivals at the top of the conference now, Richmond and William and Mary together.
Well, I also want to point out
being right next to each other.
we have not had a single team in the national championship contender spot yet, and we just put 3 teams in the playoffs here. So if that doesn't tell you anything about the last 2 conferences and the FCS we have left to talk about, and at the very least how high of a regard we hold them, buckle up, because I'm really excited for next week.
One thing for William and Mary before we jump ship completely, John Pius is gone, which was their best defender. He now plays for the Wisconsin Badgers. But they do return their running back, who was hurt all last season. Bronson Yoder is back, which should boost this offense even more. Excited for William and Mary this season. I think they're going to be very solid, obviously. But
hell yeah.
All right, let's jump to the Atlantic coast, where we find Stanford and Cal and SMU.
You switched it up on me.
What did I do? Am I supposed to do Big 12 first?
I thought we were doing the Big 12 first. It doesn't matter.
Well, it doesn't matter. And we're looking at the ACC now, so
Yeah.
it is what it is. Nice little in-game banner change. Love to see it. Again, I think we start bottom to top because we do have a couple playoff teams in the ACC.
Absolutely.
One or two, I would say. Going to be hard to get 3 out of the ACC, but there's a few teams in contention there. So the absolute bottom of the conference, I'm looking at Stanford.
Yeah. I think it's safe to put them in shit. Yep, I agree.
Might be Virginia down there as well.
I would agree with that as well. SMU.
No.
SMU in relation to the conference, I think is going to end up in bad, but I think realistically they're probably a mid team. So we'll get to them in a little bit.
I agree. My next thought is Wake Forest, which feels harsh.
What
But
they
certainly
last year?
Underperformed. Not great last year.
Yeah, I'm pulling it 14th in the ACC. Oh yeah, they just decided scoring was overrated apparently, which is like falling off a cliff from where they were a year prior, winning the Gasparilla Bowl against Missouri. But I will say I feel like that's kind of Wake Forest's MO. They're up and down. I just don't know if it's going to be a prolonged down or if they're going to find the uptick this year.
Let's call them the bottom of bad. I don't want to pile on too many shit teams because, like, in relation to the entirety of FBS college football, Wake Forest is better than, like, the bottom of the Conference
I
USA
think
or
too.
something.
Yeah, I think what we saw last year too was something we haven't seen in the ACC in a long time. I feel like the ACC took a big step forward last year as far as talent across the conference. It is no longer the Clemson show, and really, the fact that Clemson was still making the playoff with ease, and they're with ease. I mean, there wasn't really a debate. It was like, yes, Clemson is going to the playoff, the 4-team format. The conference sucked.
Right.
I mean, the conference sucked, and nobody questioned that an undefeated Clemson deserved to be there. So that just tells you how good those Clemson teams were. But also,
and how terrible it was that Florida State got left out last year.
yeah, when the conference was doing better.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy talk.
Oh man. So down here, joining Wake Forest in bad now should probably be
Georgia Tech,
the new Bill O'Brien squad, Boston College.
You think?
What do they really bring to the table here?
Bill O'Brien. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, are you?
He can't trade away his best player for nothing. So I mean,
right? I know. So that's all of his moves gone.
Yeah, they're at least mid because of that, right? No, bad. Okay.
Georgia Tech, I don't know if they're bad or mid. I feel like Georgia Tech gets promoted to mid. I feel like they outplayed bad.
I think they got to start there. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast that the transition from the triple option to their new offense now, and it seems like they already had the athletes in place. That the triple option was just the dinosaur offense they kept running because of their coach. They were ready to go out there and perform because they're athletes, right? They're ready. They're ready for the challenge. Another year in that offense.
7-6 last year.
Yeah, this is definitely a week 1 bowl game team.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where we need to draw the line between bad and mid. Do we expect Boston College to make a bowl game? I kind of see them as a 5 win team, 4 or 5 win team.
That's fair.
So then the question is, what do we think about Duke? Because
They
this is
lost
a new
everything.
look Duke team. And yeah, Manny Diaz comes in, new head coach. I don't have a ton of faith in Manny Diaz.
But do you have faith in Malik Murphy?
No. What has Malik Murphy done to give me a ton of faith in Malik Murphy?
Didn't he lose the job last year?
Yeah, so I say Duke also ends up in bad for us. Oh, and Notre Dame's in here too, because that's where they belong.
Yeah.
They have a
No,
scheduling agreement with the ACC. It counts.
Mm-hmm. Still counts. And what? They're in the top. They're like 8. They're in the top 25 preseason top 25.
I would put them as a playoff team, actually. There are 12 teams make playoff now, so
yeah, you just want to throw them in there right away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not? They're not technically in the ACC, so we're talking about all these,
I mean,
bottom
that's
feeder
fair.
ACC teams,
And it
they're
kind of
getting
works
popped
because
up on the screen.
we were just talking about Duke, and they took their quarterback. So
Right.
which,
I
by the
know.
way, is probably why Wake Forest fell off last year because Notre Dame took their quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's a method to their madness. They just take a really good quarterback on a mid ACC team, and they give them a good team around them, make them great, make them look good, get them a deal with Hallmark for Christmas movies.
Oh man, I don't think Riley Leonard's on the same level of Hallmarkification.
That's Sam
We'll
Hartman.
see. We'll see. We'll see this
I don't
season.
know. Yeah,
I don't
maybe
know.
maybe he comes out with a beard and has a glow up. We'll see.
If he has a beard, man, that would be a weird. I don't know about that.
I mean, it was weird seeing Sam Hartman rocking the
It
full face
was.
beard.
It was.
So I mean,
all right. Next for the ACC here, I don't see much on this Pitt offense to give me any confidence that they are a bowl team. Maybe Pat Narduzzi gets a little bit of a bump just because I do trust his teams to be pretty physical and maybe muscle out a win or two.
yeah, I'll throw him in bad with you. But you want to talk about a team that muscles out some wins? Probably my favorite team, or has become my favorite team in the ACC. The Wolfpack out of North Carolina
Mm-hmm.
State. Dave Doran. You want to talk about a team that's going to hit you in the mouth, play hard, play physical? It's North Carolina State.
And I thought we were starting bottom up, so I wasn't even going to talk about them yet.
Well, you got me talk. You threw physical in there, and that's been one of my favorite things about North Carolina State.
Oh
and
yeah, I love NC State for that. And they bring in Grayson McCall.
Yeah,
which baller, love that.
Dave Doran's the winningest coach at North Carolina State in North Carolina State history now. I believe he did that last year.
They smurfed the running back from Duke, Jordan Waters, which another shot at Duke being in bad. They bring in a very exciting receiver, Noah Rogers. We'll see how he does his first season. I see NC State as a potential contender for the conference.
I was thinking the same thing. Granted, there are probably 2 other teams that are going to go in this conference championship contender. Obviously, Notre Dame can't go in that tier.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I 100% agree. The question for me is, do you see them as a playoff team without a conference championship, or they need to have that to have a shot at the playoffs?
That is the question to end all questions with this NC State team. Here is my issue. I don't know if they beat Tennessee. And if they don't beat Tennessee, they need to win the ACC to get in.
Right. Because they don't have
So
anybody else on their schedule.
The schedule's not very good. So either they beat Tennessee, in which case they can lose to Clemson and it doesn't hurt them. Or they lose to Tennessee and then they have to beat Clemson. And if you're beating Clemson, you're beating Syracuse and Cal and Stanford and Duke and Georgia Tech.
Right.
And,
Right.
I mean, North Carolina might actually give them fits, mostly just because it's a rivalry. But they should beat Western Carolina, so give them that.
I 100% support throwing them in the conference championship contender spot. I'm happy we have, more than just the two that I know everybody is expecting to be in there, and that we are in lockstep on this one here too.
Well, let's go ahead and put those two up there then. Florida State and Clemson are the favorites for the ACC this year.
Right.
And deservedly so, right? Cade Klubnik's back, which hasn't been the best quarterback in recent Clemson history, but that's a really hard bar to clear. So Klubnik's fine. And Florida State brings in DJ Uiagalelei, who used to be the quarterback at Clemson, but everybody hated him because he was the guy after Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, he had no shot. And
but also, Florida State brings in Damian Martinez, which is my underappreciated portal signing of the offseason. He was so good at Oregon State, and now we get to see Damian Martinez at a legitimate playoff contender. I'm very excited.
And Mike Norvell is probably one of the better motivators in college football. And his team just got absolutely fucking embarrassed after grandstanding that they should have been in the playoffs last year. I don't know that Florida State's going to be pulling punches.
Right.
I do think they're going to be susceptible to trap games, which we've already talked about one of them early in the season against Memphis. I still think they fully belong in this conference championship contender here. I fully expect one of these three teams will be in the playoff.
Wait.
I am curious.
I messed up.
What did you mess up?
Damian Martinez did not transfer to Florida State.
He transferred to Florida, didn't he?
Miami. Which we haven't talked about yet.
We'll get there.
Oh, jeez.
I don't think it changes much about Florida State, though.
It doesn't change anything about Florida State. It changes. Oh, man. Do we put Miami in the conference championship contender tier?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
An offense with Cam Ward and Damian Martinez, though, man.
Yeah, but it's Mario Cristobal. He's going to do something that makes no fucking sense that's going to cost his team a game. Guaranteed. One that they'll need at the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll put him in good. Before the show, how much do you trust Miami? Well, I don't, but I don't know. I don't know where you're going with this. I would have put him in mid, but you start like you said, you start looking at some of the transfers they brought in. I think the talent, they have the talent to overcome the Cristobal effect, but not enough to get into the conference championship.
I really like that offense now. I hate that I like it as much as I do. That makes it difficult.
Don't let them fool you. Don't let them fool you. Because I don't know how much that offense is going to hold up to getting beat up by North Carolina State, which, granted, they don't play during the regular season.
Right.
But
if we get a conference title game of NC State Miami, first of all, wild. Second of all, I would pick NC State.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would.
Still think Miami's man, that talent level is much higher than it has been. So at least props for that.
I mean, I think in some ways this could be a make it or break it year for Mario Cristobal too. Like, I'm just being honest here.
If he doesn't deliver this year, that is a very bad look. I would agree with you there.
Is Hard Rock going to be prepared in time? Because I know Hard Rock Stadium got fucked up from the Copa America tournament. Whatever.
It'll be sure. It'll be fine, I'm sure. Just replace the field. I mean, it's not
put a dome on it. That's fine.
Not like they're building a new building around the field. Just replacing the surface. Teams do that all the time. It'll be fun. All right. Alongside Miami in good, we either have 1, 2, or 3 teams, in my opinion. I'm curious if we even have the same 3 in mind when I say that.
I think it's Louisville, North Carolina, and Syracuse. If I'm looking at the
we do not have the same 3 teams in mind.
Well, I hope we don't have the opposite.
Louisville and North Carolina, I agree with. Even though North Carolina loses a fair bit, they bring back Omarion Hampton, which might be the best running back in college football. It's either him or Ollie Gordon or the Ohio State guys. Or, I mean, there's a lot of good running backs right now, actually. But Omarion Hampton's phenomenal. And Louisville's defense keeps them in it kind of no matter what they have going on offense. But we have 7th-year quarterback now in college football, Tyler Shock, playing his first season at Louisville. If he can stay healthy, which was an issue at Texas Tech for him, but if he can stay healthy, that offense at least has plenty of experience. Give him that. And we'll see what Jeff Brom can do with an experienced quarterback. My other team for good is Virginia Tech.
That's fair.
Who won 5 of the last 7 games on their schedule last year, and their quarterback is pretty exciting. If you've seen him play, he's it's hard to compare because Virginia Tech has the Michael Vick effect. So anytime you try to talk about a good scrambler like Kyron Drones is, it's easy to just say, well, he's not as good as Michael Vick. But Kyron Drones is really good.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have it in their head, too, that Virginia Tech's just going to disappoint because of how things had kind of gone under Justin Fuente. But keep in mind, a lot of the team that was there last year was built by him, and he just wasn't able to see it through. So I'm not going to disagree with you on putting them in good here, but I am curious to see if this is going to continue or if they are going to have that backslide and become a disappointment again in the coming years.
Brent Pry did say he would be disappointed if we didn't compete for a conference title this year, which that's too far for me.
Yeah. Clearly it's too far for me.
I'm glad the head coach believes in his team, though. Nice to hear. I am curious if Syracuse gets up into that good tier as well, though. Now that you say them, that is kind of a oof.
I think there's enough. Let me look at Syracuse's schedule because that honestly might determine it.
Who do they have on offense that excites you?
Nobody. But that dome excites me. What they're able to consistently do to rank teams at their place, I'm here for it.
You would get excited by a dome.
Hell yeah, brother. They don't.
Like,
They
I know
play North
everybody's
Carolina
hyped about
State.
them getting Kyle McCord in, but there's a reason Ohio State didn't want him back. So
They have North Carolina State and Miami on their schedule, which is probably going to be their toughest games. And they
and
have to
Virginia Tech
go. They have Virginia Tech, but they
and
have
at
Virginia
Cal.
Tech. They have Virginia Tech and Miami at home. And let's just stop this for a second. Cal is clearly in the mid tier, and I will hear no such argument for them being anywhere else. Thank you. Good night.
I agree.
That being said, yes, they have to go to Cal. Yes, they have to go to NC State. If they can win, I think Cal, they probably have a better chance of winning. If they can keep it close against NC State, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt against Virginia Tech and Miami at home.
Underrated non-conference game of the year, though, Syracuse at UNLV.
Yeah. UNLV got way better than
the
they
Rebels.
should be. Yeah. I think UNLV is going to be better than anybody wants them to be.
I'm more comfortable putting Syracuse at the top of mid.
Okay. And I want to put SMU at the back of mid.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just like all SMU teams, their offense should be all right this year, and their defense should be pretty mid. So,
and I wonder if there's going to be any kind of adjustment back to the mean for them on that as they get into the ACC a little bit more. I'm also curious if the ACC is going to be around for much longer because Florida State kind of sort of won their suit, but then the SEC is like, fuck no, we don't want you. Clemson seems to be jumping on this boat with them. North Carolina seems to be jumping on this boat with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious what's going to happen with the ACC here. It's wild to me that the Pac-12 were the big losers out of the Power Five and all this conference shuffle realignment. It's crazy to me that the ACC is still standing, even if barely. And the conference rather, that everybody left for dead and thought was going to be the one left in the dust, has really picked up the pace and one of the better conferences. I would put our next conference that we're going to talk about, I would put the Big 12 up against the ACC. I think it'd be pretty interesting to see what a 1-for-1, if you ranked them top to bottom and put, 1 versus 1 and so on against each other, what it would be like with these two conferences here.
Well, we have 4 good mid and 4 bad teams in the ACC. So let's keep that in mind as we do the Big 12 here in a second. Before we do jump there, one thought that I just lost.
I've got one for you.
Okay.
There's
it's good.
There's somebody that every year goes and writes what he calls the Undefeated blog. He's a Barstool Sports blogger. Does the Undefeated blog every year at the start of college football season for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So I think it's a fun exercise here. Do we think Notre Dame can go undefeated? Because we just haven't spent really any time talking about them. And if not them, do we see any team in this conference that we think goes undefeated to begin with?
I don't see an ACC team going undefeated.
So that brings us back to Notre Dame.
Right.
Here's the thing. They start off at Texas A&M. That is game 1 of the season for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The other big obstacles I think they have are going to be a Florida State team at the end of the season, and then, of course, the Jeweled Shillelagh against USC at the end of the season. So there's, to me, 3 games they have the potential to lose here.
I see a fourth.
Who do you think it
Yeah.
is? Louisville?
At Purdue.
At Purdue? I completely overlooked them.
Mm-hmm. Maybe not because of where they sit in the schedule. Like they have Northern Illinois and Miami, Ohio surrounding Purdue. So it's hard to overlook Purdue like they usually get away with.
Right.
But playing in West Lafayette is never easy for some reason.
I think another interesting one, looking for trap games, they played a triple option team before their other preseason ranked opponents at the end of the season. They played Navy the week before they play Florida State, and they play Army the week before they play USC. I think Army, if I'm looking at this, I think Army's the trap game. And I'm going to say that because they'll probably beat Navy, and they'll go in thinking, we already know how to beat the triple option. We already know how to beat the Service Academy. We need to focus on USC, who may climb in the polls. I think Army's the trap game on the schedule. So if you look past kind of the obvious, and as you pointed out, Purdue playing in West Lafayette there, I think Army's the other big glaring trap game to me here for Notre Dame.
It is kind of crazy. They play Navy at MetLife in East Rutherford, New Jersey, and they play Army at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx.
That's fun.
That is pretty cool. Love that. The only reason I don't see Louisville as like a legitimate challenge to Notre Dame, they're playing it at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Like we saw what Louisville could do at home last year. I don't expect them to be a contender for the conference like they were last year, surprisingly. As such, I don't see them as a real threat at Notre Dame. We've seen in the past Notre Dame get tripped up in games where they really shouldn't be. We saw under Marcus Freeman, too. So we saw them lose to Marshall, right? We very well could see them lose to Stanford this year for no good reason. They lost at Louisville last year. They didn't seem like they should have. I don't trust Notre Dame to go undefeated ever. I would say this schedule shapes up to where they don't need to be a playoff team, which is exactly the kind of schedule that they need. But more likely than not, they'll be a 10-plus win team. Like they're good enough to be just I don't know if they can lose 2 games and still make the playoff.
Right. That's the tough thing about them not being in a conference.
Right.
Because if you look at their schedule, fortunately, they don't play any FCS teams, which I don't think anybody would expect them to. Northern Illinois, Miami, Ohio. Let's face it, Notre Dame and Army kind of fall into that lower tier, if you will. You're facing Purdue, who is going to be considered a lower team in the Big Ten. Stanford, who is absolutely a lower team in the ACC, as we've ranked them as well.
And Virginia.
I mean, you do not have a strong schedule in front of you. And we put Georgia Tech in mid. Honestly, they're a bit of a wild card this year. Who knows? Who really knows, right?
Maybe Georgia Tech's more of a trap than we're giving it credit for. You come off of a weirdly close game against your rival Stanford. You go down to Atlanta, and it's the week before you have to start getting ready for the triple option. Maybe Georgia Tech surprises them. Or maybe they're thinking the same way we are, and it's no surprise. So I don't expect Notre Dame to be undefeated, no. One thing I will say before we move on, this is what I was trying to get to. We have 3 teams in this conference championship contender tier. We don't have anybody in the playoff team tier. which, I mean, I think the only legitimate way to make that distinction right now is to.
Do we think there's a team that makes it without winning the conference?
Well, I was starting to think that way, but then I just also on air live had the thought, when we get to the Big Ten, the SEC, are we not going to put Ohio State, Georgia up higher than the conference champion contender? Maybe true. NC State that's their path to the playoff. Maybe Florida State and Clemson get up in that playoff team tier.
I think you're probably right, because we did that with the American the last time we had a playoff team conversation. Yeah. We threw Memphis in that playoff team tier, knowing that they have to win the conference championship to get there, but it was because they that's the only way they can get in there, is if they win the conference championship.
I think the way I see NC State. I think they're better than our other good teams, but they won't make the playoff unless they win the ACC.
Yeah. It's definitely going to get confusing trying to keep all this straight because it is a little bit different than how we did the American Athletic Conference already. But I think this makes sense. This makes sense for now.
Somewhat. All right. Big 12 time.
Hell yeah, brother.
The biggest 12 we've ever had. Because not only do we have a couple of former American Athletic Conference teams, we have the Four Corners schools as well. Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado join from the Pac-12. But they're losing Oklahoma and Texas, which means we have a new reign of terror. Texas will not be able to control everything the Big 12 does anymore.
Finally.
We have to assume that power now runs through Mike Gundy himself personally.
Yeah, or T-Boone Pickens, one of the two.
Well, he's deceased, so shouldn't be him.
He died? What?
Several years ago now.
No.
I'm very confident in this.
Oh, he died in 2019. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
All right, carry on.
All right. With that being said, Oklahoma State, we all put in our playoff bracket, I believe. So we should go ahead and throw them in the playoff team tier. The other team that I assume we would all think is in contention for that spot would be Utah. The question for Utah is if they can stay healthy, because them winning the conference is predicated on Cam Rising being available, which he should be, and he sat out all of last season. Basically, seems like in order to be ready for one final, real let's go season. But he hasn't been healthy. So I want to put them in the playoff team tier.
I'm fine with that. I don't have an issue.
That's where they belong. But we'll see, because the injuries have really hurt this team in the past. At the same time, even with injuries, they've been in contention for the Pac-12 championship. So who knows? One question I have with Utah is this Kyle Whittingham's last season? Utah did something that we haven't seen many other teams do. They named a coach in waiting. Their defensive coordinator is known to be the next head coach of Utah whenever that time comes. But it's not been discussed whether or not Kyle Whittingham is going to retire after this year or not. He is tied with Mike Gundy as the second and third together longest tenured coaches in all of the FBS, behind Kirk Ferentz at Iowa. He's done phenomenal things with Utah. Got them from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 to the Big 12. Got to the Rose Bowl a couple times with Utah, something nobody really thought was possible until Urban Meyer got there, and then Kyle Whittingham took over and maybe made them even better. So, do we see this as maybe Kyle Whittingham and Cam Rising go out together? If they do, I'm sure they'll be pushing like hell to go out with a bang.
Yeah, I think that's the only logical answer here too. And I Cam Rising, if he wants to have a future playing football, has to stay healthy because he's like you said, he's got all the potential in the world. He's got all the talent in the world. He's just had a hard time staying on the field. I'm curious to see if playing in the Big 12 is going to change some of that as well. I don't want to jinx him, but I have not seen or known the Big 12 to be this massive pass rush dominant league. It's been an offense first league. It's been a air it out and make the corners and safeties work all game long.
Mm-hmm.
That should play to all his strengths, and hopefully we'll play to the strengths of that offensive line and be able to keep him clean, keep him healthy, keep him from getting hurt this year.
Alongside Utah, coming over from the Pac-12 is another extremely talented team in Arizona. They lose their head coach, Jed Fish, to Washington, but they bring in Brent Brennan from San Jose State, probably the best available coach they could have pulled, and held that roster together, which has some folks consider to be the best receiver in college football, up there alongside Luther Burden anyway, and the really hard to pronounce Tetaroa. Go with that. Noah Fafita at quarterback, still one of the best quarterback wide receiver combos that we have going in college football right now. Arizona on paper seems like a contender for the conference. I don't know about this defense, and I don't know about the transition of head coach going to Brent Brennan, but the guy made San Jose State relevant, so it's hard to count him out.
I think being able to keep the team together says a lot about who he is as a coach, and I think he's going to have these guys ready to go, ready to play. I'm willing to put them in conference champion contender here. But I will say, I think maybe there's one more team we can throw in here, and then I think we start falling off fast and hard.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to be saying the same team with this would be Kansas State.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't want to shy off of Kansas State. I know I just said Big 12 versus ACC would be something very fun to watch, very fun to see. But I will also say a large part of that is because this Power 5, quote unquote, conference is very mid-heavy. I don't know that we are going to have a ton of teams that we want to put in good, but I will also say the way at least that I see it, a lot of the teams that are left that I would put in mid, very close to being good and very, very reasonably could be in that good tier by the end of the year.
I think we probably have 3 good teams in this conference. And I say Kansas leads them off, assuming, like we had to assume for Utah, assuming they stay healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like a big assumption. Jalen Daniels hasn't really been able to stay healthy. But if he can, Kansas is dang good.
But how great would it be to have the Sunflower Showdown mean something again?
It would be phenomenal. I want to put Kansas in good, and I don't think you can stop me.
I'm not going to. But that then begs the question: what are the other two you
who are
have
my
here?
other two? I think Iowa State and West Virginia deserve a lot of credit.
I
And
would say West Virginia would be the one that I would put in good.
I think you're sleeping.
I saw Iowa State play last year. They were not good.
They weren't great.
I mean,
Their quarterback was a true freshman.
I'll give them that, and I'll also give them that it is still a Big 12 defense at the end of the day. Of course, they were going to get the ball thrown around on them all night long. Oh man, how much?
What games did you actually see them play though? Because they lost at Oklahoma by 30 points, but other than that, they played everybody pretty close. Even Texas was a 10-point game. Yes, they lost to Ohio. That's not happening this year.
You're not helping your case here.
I mean, I don't think we can go off of the bowl game. What we watched them live at the Liberty Bowl was not indicative of this team.
I mean,
all right, shit. Yeah. Well, fine.
Do you really believe that Rocco Becht is going to make that much of a jump, though?
I think he has the potential to. I think we're going to look back next season and go, Iowa State is better than a lot of teams in the FBS.
I think that's probably reasonable, and that's more of where I'm coming from with the bulk of this conference. I think there's a lot of potential for a lot of the teams we're going to put in mid here. Iowa State, I would even say Iowa State included, although probably have a couple teams ahead of them in mid personally. But I think a lot of these mid teams have a lot of potential to take a jump and go up into that good tier by the end of the year.
Well, I wasn't expecting to have Iowa State in mid, but my thought was the top of mid has to be TCU. And up there as a borderline good team. They were 5-7 last season. Is the only thing holding them back for me. But they bring in a new defensive coordinator, being Andy Avalos. This time last season, we were talking about him as the head coach of Boise State. He's definitely better as a defense coordinator, but he is a good defense coordinator. So I want to throw TCU up in there. And if you're saying ahead of Iowa State, I'll take it. It's fine. Texas Tech needs to be in there as well.
Yep, 100%. Wreck them. They seem to just always disappoint, unfortunately. Yeah. So if you want to put them behind Iowa State, I fully support that. They have everything laid out in front of them year in and year out, and for whatever reason, fucks something up somewhere along the line. They got a new deal with Adidas, thanks to Patrick Mahomes. I think Texas Tech's going to be a really fun team this year, though.
They have Taj Brooks back, who is another one of those running backs who's just sensational and kind of under the radar, kind of like a Jaden Ott at Cal, where you have that top tier that everybody talks about, the Marion Hampton, Ollie Gordon, and the Ohio State guys. But Taj Brooks is right there, and a 1,500-yard rusher last season. Texas Tech is capable of keeping it on the ground. My next question would be, is UCF actually a mid team? I guess with KJ Jefferson coming in, it's hard not to bump him up.
I think, unfortunately, I have to put him in mid. I don't want to. I really don't want to. I would love nothing more than to put him in bad or shit. But I don't see them falling into that tier for a while, which is unfortunate. And I do think KJ Jefferson is going to elevate this team to where potentially I will have to swallow all of my pride and call them a good team. by the end of the season. And that hurts. That hurts me
They're
deeply.
definitely, right now, I would call them a bowl-eligible team.
100%.
I don't know who else I can say that about in the Big 12.
That's remaining on this list?
Yeah.
I think BYU is going to be better than I think you're going to give them credit for off the rip here.
They were so bad last year.
Were they, though?
Being so bad still got them to 5 wins, I guess.
Yeah.
But their non-conference schedule is not as simple as it was last season.
I mean,
last year they played Sam Houston, Southern Utah, and Arkansas in the non-conference.
right.
Lost to Arkansas.
Right.
This year, they'll beat Southern Illinois.
Maybe.
Do they beat SMU?
I think they beat SMU. I think they beat SMU easily.
Do they go into Laramie and beat Wyoming? I actually don't
so.
know.
I think so.
And even if they do that, they're losing to Kansas State, Arizona, Oklahoma State, UCF, Utah, Kansas.
I don't think they lose to all of those as easily as you're making it sound. And I think that's
on
why.
That team? Name me a player on that team.
I hate you. Fine, put them in bed. Do it. It's fine.
I feel like that's very telling. That's my new favorite argument. Right alongside them, I would put Baylor, who jumps out of shit because of the transfer of DeQuan Finn from Toledo, who I'm very high on, and I hope he dominates the Baylor Bears. By dominates, I mean wins more than like 3 games. Let's go. It's crazy to me that Baylor just very recently was like a 9-win team contending for the Big 12, and now after one dog shit season, everybody's like, yeah, Baylor just sucks. Which, to be fair, most of their history has been that. But Dave Aranda was talked about as one of the greatest coaches, like greatest young first couple of year coaches that we had in the country, and then one bad season. That's all you get at Baylor. Better step it up. Right alongside them, I would say Houston probably goes in bad as well, even though Willie Fritz has arrived. Who else do they have?
Yeah. We're left with 3 teams here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2 of them go in mid. I think Cincinnati goes in mid. I think the defense is going to be what they're going to have to cling to. I think they're going to have one of the better defenses in the Big 12. I don't want to say the best. I'm not going to throw them above Cincinnati or above Kansas State. Sorry, the cat logo made me think Cincinnati. Don't ask me why. I don't think they're going to have a better defense than the top 4 teams that we've already identified here. But I do think they've got talent on this team. It's just going to be finding it and making sure that's in the right spot here. I think they're probably going to be in mid. I think they're probably going to make a bowl game. The other team that I would put in mid, and I know you're going to scoff at it, it's Colorado.
I knew it was going to happen as soon as you said there's 2 of these 3 left.
Well, because you knew it wasn't Arizona State.
Before we even get there, let's do that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Arizona State in the shit. It's the only shit team in the Big 12 right now.
You knew it wasn't Arizona
They have
State.
a new head coach. I hope the best for them.
I think they're still trying to unfuck what Herm Edwards did.
I completely agree, and that's That's the reason they're in such dire straits. But anyway,
I'm sorry for all the Sun Devils fans.
it is very hard for me to get on board with Colorado in the mid tier.
I completely agree with you. I think, but in that same breath, if they're bad, they're at the top of bad. Bare minimum. Maybe they are struggling to get to 6 wins this year. And maybe that's why you want to put them in bad versus mid. But I do think that there is a reasonable chance, looking at their schedule, that they could make a bowl game.
Here's my legitimate analysis of this situation, because I feel like a lot of it gets tied into, I don't like Deion Sanders. I don't like what he's done to the brand. Blah, 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 blah. Let's talk about this team legitimately straight up. The quarterback's solid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody kind of agrees Shedeur Sanders is legitimately a good quarterback. Their offensive line theoretically upgraded, on field practically probably not that much. You're going to be dealing with some highly rated freshmen and a couple of brand new transfers. But again, just like we talk about a lot with offensive lines, usually ends up having more to do with the cohesion of the unit than about the individual talent of each individual piece on the offensive line. This offensive line is not going to be cohesive, and it just straight up won't be until the back half of the season. It's impossible to fake that cohesion. So you're going into the dumbest game possible in week 1,
Yes.
where you bring in the North Dakota State Bison, where Deion Sanders' brand and the way he coaches and the way he talks to his guys and the way he talks about his guys, I believe Colorado's going to overlook North Dakota State. It is very possible that they lose that week 1 game to the FCS and DSU Bison. If they do that, because of how emotional Deion is, there's a very good chance they drop the next 2 games to Nebraska and at Colorado State.
Yeah.
Then we're talking about a 3-win team at best.
I would say,
on the other hand, before I release this thought, on the other hand, they beat North Dakota State. It's up in the air to me whether they're going to beat Nebraska. It's at Nebraska this year. Colorado State played them tough. If that's a close game again, let's say they're 5-0 heading into the bye week. Let's just give it to them. They beat Nebraska. They beat Colorado State. That's assuming a win over the Bison. Obviously, I'm assuming they're better than Baylor, and they go into UCF and pull it off. Then they run into the buzzsaw.
yeah,
Kansas State and at Arizona. Are they actually going to survive that? Again, a lot of that comes down to the emotional. The running off of emotions is very powerful for very short stints of time. It does not last. You're saying Cincinnati has potentially one of the best defenses in the league this year. Do they get off that Kansas State and Arizona game and then go play Cincinnati tough?
And this is where I think it gets interesting. Okay. Because you talk about the buzzsaw that they have to face. Cincinnati looks to have an easier schedule. They have Pittsburgh at home. They have Texas Tech, but they have Texas Tech on the road. They have to go to Colorado. They have to go to Iowa State. They have to go to Kansas State. and they have TCU to finish the year out against. Oh, and they play West Virginia. So they don't play as many preseason ranked teams, but by our own analysis, they're playing just as many teams that are better than them already at this point. I think where our distinction is going to be here, because I think Cincinnati and Colorado, I feel confident in saying both of them are at least 5-win teams. I do think that 6th win comes down to the Cincinnati-Colorado game. I think that's going to be a much bigger game for both of these teams than it would appear when you initially look at the schedule, at least on the Cincinnati side of things.
You would like to assume that the tie goes to the home team.
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati playing at that elevation.
That's what worries me, because I don't know how well I just said best defense in the conference, right? I don't know how well that defense is going to travel to that elevation. They don't play any other games at elevation like that the rest of the season.
Yeah. All right.
If I can't get both of them, I'm going to get one of them.
I like the analysis of 5 wins, and it comes down to Cincinnati at Colorado. In that scenario, I give it to Colorado.
Colorado, the back of mid, Cincinnati at the top of bad. I'll buy that.
There's also this feeling I have that this is Scott Satterfield's hot season.
Mm-hmm.
As crazy as that sounds, because it's his second year at Cincinnati. But
you talk about raw deals.
I know. I know. Coming up to a team that just made the playoff and then just got promoted to a power conference, and they're all excited, and then they lose basically the entire team, and they win 2 games. But Satterfield was not doing well at Louisville either. Louisville was pretty happy to let him go to Cincinnati, which is actually a rival. They were like, thank you for taking our head coach. If they don't make a bowl game this year, I don't know if Satterfield's back, which is brutal. And I would say if there is progression, he probably should be back.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how long Cincinnati's going to be willing to wait.
No,
they won 3 games last year. Sorry, they
have fumbled the bag. Yeah, they have fumbled the bag on this move up just as bad as Houston has. Yeah. Somehow, some way. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. UCF didn't win a single game at the FBS level.
Right.
And they had back-to-back undefeated seasons before finally losing to the team that would win the national championship the following year. They've unfortunately been very consistent ever since that rise. Let's not talk about it. Anyway, we've gone through 2 conferences here where we have multiple playoff teams, including Notre Dame. I didn't ask it during the ACC conversation. I'll ask it now. Of the 5 teams plus the conference champions contenders, so another 3, any of them, you think there's any shot that you take any of them as a national champion contender today?
No.
Fair enough.
I think right now we have 3 national championship contenders. And all 3 of them we will meet in the next episode of the Big Dudes in the Trenches podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Wow, what a great podcast.
What a cliffhanger to end it on. This was almost a 2-hour show talking about 5 different conferences. Next week will be probably an even longer show talking about 4 conferences. So get ready for that.
It's we went through our 3 FCS conferences faster than we will go through 2 FCS conferences next week.
Absolutely.
We very well may spend 30 minutes just on one of them.
So the saving grace there, the ACC is 17 teams, the Big Ten is 18 teams. So figure about the same amount of time. And then the Big 12 is bigger than the SEC. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, it's the same size. Never mind. It'll take just as long.
Fortunately, the Big Sky does have a massive tier break in talent. Missouri Valley Football Conference does not. The
Right.
SEC,
So,
the talent gap in the SEC has closed. The Big Ten, fortunately, I still think has a massive talent gap as well. So hopefully they'll speed some things up, but I'm sure you're going to tell me that I'm wrong about the Big Ten this year.
I think there are some interesting teams closer to the bottom.
That's fair.
We're going to have a hard time breaking out mid and bad. I don't know if there's too much shit anymore. We'll see. We'll see when we get there. We have a whole week to think about it.
Oh yeah, brother.
But seriously, thank you everybody for tuning in, and catch us next time for our real national championship contenders in both the FBS and the FCS, because we haven't put anybody in either of those tiers. So wild stuff coming down the pipeline. And like I said earlier in the show, we are basically, I said we were 2 weeks out. We're really a week and a half out of week 0, which is very exciting, of course. And we have football. We have football again.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Before we get out of here, though,
in addition to that Florida State Georgia Tech game, I'm looking forward to Montana State, New Mexico, which I feel like should be a Montana State win.
It probably will be. Let's be real.
Love it.
Before we get out of here, though, let me read off some links for y'all. You can support the channel. You can support what we do by heading on over to patreon.com/BDT football, twitch.tv/Big Dudes in the Trenches. You can catch us live there, or you could pay for a subscription to the channel. That'll help us out as well. And you won't have to get ads in the middle of the show, which really that's the best part about it. We also have a Twitter. Check us out on Twitter, or X, as it's officially called, I think, at BDT Football, Facebook.com/BDT Football. Instagram, throw the underscore in between the BDT and the football, and you'll find us. You can check out our website, BDTfootball.com. I think we're going to get some blogging going this year, so be on the lookout for that. We also have our email address where you can mail in your questions for the show, mailbox@bdtfootball.com. And if you're not watching us on YouTube, check us out there too. YouTube.com/Big Dudes in the Trenches. Just search Big Dudes in the Trenches. You should find us fairly easily. And last but not least, probably where we're most active, always talking about football and other things. Check us out at our Discord, discord.gg/9 lowercase g capital X 3 lowercase PT capital G 36 capital E. Suck it, Tug.
I love that you read the entire thing every time, because there's no way in hell anybody actually listens to that and types it in. Just go to the description of the podcast. You can find all those links there. You can click on them. It makes it way easier. But if you listen and type it in manually, let us know that, so that we can give you some sort of elevated status in the Discord, because that would be incredible. And it would be a big F you to Tug in the process.
You would be my best friend.
But that's all I got, man. Anything before we head out of here?
Yeah. What would a bear be without bees?
All ears.
All ears, baby.
Too easy.
We doing
too
Tug's
easy.
thing?
Fuck no. Bye.
Peace out, Girl Scout. We'll see y'all next week.